right on page, starting on page 308, there's a section called Performance Measurements. Parents and educators want assessments that allow students to demonstrate in a number of ways that they have met the standards in real world or authentic settings, in other words, performances. So if we look at authentic assessments on page 309, there's a whole section there. When the tasks are realistic in terms of being as close as possible to how the learning would be applied in the real world setting, they are considered to be authentic. For instance, when I put my math books in the basement and taught math in a real life type, real world type activities, that's when it started clicking with my students, because they had a purpose. They needed to know this because this was going to be their survival in the real world, those authentic activities. When assessments are authentic, the tasks are based on problems and contexts that are clearly seen as relevant and real. There are three major areas to consider in developing authentic assessments for standards. First, a rich context needs to be designed, one that permits inquiry to occur. I don't need to be doing the thinking for the students. It needs to be broad enough that the students are doing thinking for them. For instance, the PBL, I've set your boundaries, but you're deciding how far they go and what direction they go. Second, it is important to fill the context with a wide variety of questions so that different types of thinking can occur. And finally, the critical indicators for learning need to be identified. What do we want? What is the objective for doing this activity? If there's not anything standard-based of why and justifying, then we shouldn't be doing it. Developing a performance assessment task begins by considering the learning standards, benchmarks, and objectives that are intended outcomes of the instruction. An important step in developing authentic assessment is to structure the tasks so they are complex enough to permit students to show important learning, motivating enough to encourage students to think, rich enough to offer multiple opportunities to show how and what students have shaped into an understanding, and relevant enough that students can use their own experience. Now, these are the hardest to write. Thus, why wanted us to try to write some PBLs, some authentic problems, because this is what takes so long for teachers. You won't find these just written. Well, you can find them written somewhere, but will they be relevant to your clientele, to your type of students? And then if you try to write them yourself, that takes a lot of time. So when I was thinking about doing the PBL project for you writing PBLs, it's so that there'll be some kind of a skeleton. A teacher may not use exactly what your thought was, but they may use the big picture idea that you have and then work from their own. I just want to be able to provide them that, and thus when you get to your own classroom, this will be something that you can use. Observing students in action and recording their observations in a variety of ways are critical. That tells me a lot about how your learning is based on the steps that you go about trying to figure the answers out. Too often teachers assess one way but teach another. For example, assessing by using paper and pencil test or using single answer questions when instruction has been emphasizing inquiry. That's inappropriate. There's no point doing that because that is not testing the relevance here. It's what are you trying to help your students? What's the end result? And that is so important. You have to know where you're headed. On page 311, if a context is truly authentic, students will have ample opportunities to display what they know and how and can do across a variety of different standards. And then there's some areas there: knowledge and comprehension of concepts, application of concepts, and connections of concepts to real world. Ability to solve problems and exercise thinking skills, ability to perform and apply process skills, ability to structure thinking, collaboration and other dispositions, communication, ability to modify ideas on the basis of new evidence. These are all the criteria. So to write an activity, authentic activity that allows the students that chance, can you see how much different those six, if we were measuring those six versus an ABCD choice, the learning is so much more in depth when you're looking at it that way. As seen, authentic assessment is an attempt to make testing both in and out of the classroom more closely grounded in the context of student learning and less narratively focused on a few aspects of what has been learned. So keep that in mind, the broad picture. The ultimate goal, what is the ultimate goal of your lesson? That should dictate where you're going, most definitely. Stop the movie and tell me, what is your thinking of authentic learning? What can you picture as your future with authentic learning? Let me know.